When she heard a faint cry echoing from the bush, she moved towards the direction the cry was echoing from. She saw a newborn baby in a basket, staring right into her eyes. Ifeoma could not help herself as she lifted the baby from the basket. The baby was so perfect. As she held him close to her beating heart, she felt a joy that she had never felt before. But she was scared to take the baby home out of fear of her husband. Once upon a time, in Nkwago village, there lived a young couple who never had any children out of the decision they took before getting married. They both agreed to enjoy the love and comfort of each other without children coming in the way. The couples were Obinna and Ifeoma, though Ifeoma didn't really put much thought in the decision because she was desperate to get married and she was deeply in love with Obinna. Ifeoma, who was blinded by the love she had for Obinna, agreed to the decision at her own detriment. For years, Ifeoma and her husband Obinna lived happily in their little hut, not caring about the villagers or what they had to say about their childless marriage. They were the talk of the entire village, as the people found it hard to believe that young fertile couple would get married and consciously decide not to have children. Ifeoma's family did all they could to convince them to have children who would continue their lineage, but Obinna stood his grounds. He made it clear to them that they were never having children. As Obinna was an orphan, Ifeoma's family wondered why a fertile young man should take such a decision over his life and lineage. Ifeoma had a best friend named Ogechi, who always advised her to try hard and convince her husband Obinna to allow her have children. But Ifeoma pretended to Ogechi that she was happy with their marriage and decision. But as years went by and the gossip started making its way to Ifeoma's heart, she became worried. The sight of little children always triggers her, but she had to suppress all her fears for the happiness of her husband. Every evening, Obinna and his wife ensured that they took walks around the village, gossiping and creating fond memories together. The villagers always gossiped whenever they passed. Sometimes it gets to Ifeoma, but that wasn't enough for Ifeoma as her heart ached for her own child. She loved her husband so much, but realized that something was missing from her life whenever she walked past little children playing on the street of the village. She yearned to be a mother. It was a feeling that she could not explain, a feeling that kept her awake at night, a feeling that made her lose her appetite all the day. But she was scared to tell her husband about it, as she knew the decision they took before marriage and how Obinna felt proud while telling people that they are happy and comfortable without having children. Ifeoma also wondered why Obinna decided their fate before their marriage, but she couldn't ask him why. Ogechi advised her friend to stop taking the herbs that her husband forces her to take that prevents her from getting pregnant, but rather take it for her husband and keep it a secret till she starts showing. But Ifeoma told her friend that she would never betray her husband and the promise they made to each other. Ogechi went further to tell her to be mindful with the herbs she's taking, not to damage her womb. And what if she later discovered that her husband wants children or that he has children with another woman? Ogechi asked her. But Ifeoma told her that her husband can never betray her, as he made it clear from the beginning that he never wanted children. Ifeoma asked Ogechi, "Have you asked your husband why he made such decision?" That night, Ifeoma thought about what her friend told her. She was almost considering it, but fear couldn't allow her. The next day, as Ifeoma set out for her daily routine of gathering firewood in the forest for sale, as she sells firewood with her husband in the village market, she went further into the forest. She heard a faint cry echoing inside the bush. She moved towards the direction the cry was echoing from and saw a newborn baby in a basket, staring right into her eyes. Ifeoma could not help herself. She lifted him from the basket. As she held him close to her beating heart, she felt a joy she had never felt before. But she was scared to take the baby home out of fear of her husband. Ifeoma vowed that whatever it takes, she must take the baby with her, even if it costs her her marriage. As she carried the baby and made her way back to the village, she was approached by a stranger who told her that she is the mother of the child she's with. Ifeoma couldn't prove anything as she found the child in the forest. She told her that she is willing to give her the baby, but she would promise to take good care of the baby and give her some money. She had nowhere to go to because she was abandoned by the father of the child and her parents threw her out of their house. Ifeoma felt pity on the stranger. She told her she had no money on her except the necklace on her. The stranger, who was constantly staring at the necklace, took it from her that would be enough as she made her way into the forest. Ifeoma went home with the baby. She explained to her husband how she found the baby in the forest, but she didn't tell her husband about the stranger that claimed to be the mother of the child. Obinna was not happy about the baby. Ifeoma had to pretend that she was not happy about the baby either to appease her husband. He promised Ifeoma that he would tell the village chief about the baby so that the owners could locate the baby. Obinna did as he promised. Few days later, nobody came for the baby. Ifeoma was happy, but Obinna wasn't. He kept his distance from the child and tried not to get physically or emotionally attached to the child. The village chief instructed Obinna as his wife to keep the child. Maybe it's God's way of reminding them how foolish their decision was. Hearing what the village chief said got Obinna very angry and made him to resent the baby more. Ifeoma decided to name him Chidera as Obinna had no interest in the boy. One evening, Obinna went out to inspect some trees for his firewood business. As he was returning home, unknown to Ifeoma, who was playing and praising the baby, Obinna walked in on them. She quickly dropped the baby. Obinna knew Ifeoma was so happy with Chidera. Obinna started planning on ways to return Chidera to the forest or find another family to claim him as theirs. One morning, as Ifeoma was going to the stream, she met the stranger that claimed the baby was hers again, demanding for a huge sum of money from Ifeoma, or she would tell her husband the truth. Ifeoma pleaded with her to give her some time to look for the money, but the stranger refused that she would be back in the next 7 days for her money or her child. Ifeoma thought of whom she could ask for help, but none came to mind except her friend Oge. Ifeoma went to her friend and told her the truth about Chidera and how the stranger that claimed to be his mother was demanding more money from her. Ogechi advised her to tell her husband the truth. She also told her that she doesn't have such money to borrow her. As days went by, Ifeoma was in constant fear that she might lose Chidera and that would shatter her. On the 7th day, Ifeoma was waiting patiently for the woman to come, but to no avail. She was relieved that the stranger didn't come as she was happy that Chidera would finally be hers. A few weeks later, as Obinna went to the forest to cut firewood, she met the stranger that claimed to be Chidera's mother. Obinna was angry as he shouted at her, "Why do you keep following me?" The strange woman's name was Nkoli, and she was Obinna's mistress, who got pregnant for him, but he abandoned her immediately he found out she was pregnant. Obinna believed he can't father a child based on a curse that was placed on him for abusing a deformed young girl when he was younger. His parents made sure the parents of the young girl never told a soul about it. But her mother went to Obinna and cursed him before she died, that all his children would be deformed if he ever had any child. Out of fear of the curse, Obinna decided he would never have any children. But Ifeoma was not aware of the curse. He threatened Nkoli never to come close to him or his wife, but unknown to Obinna, Chidera was his son and was in his house already. Nkoli told Obinna how she tricked his wife into taking his son. Obinna was shocked that the boy his wife brought home was actually his son. "That is not possible," Obinna shouted. "Maybe he is deformed," Obinna thought, as he remembered the curse. He begged Nkoli to leave and never return, that he would pay her a huge sum of money. Nkoli refused, that she had nowhere to go to, as her parents rejected her and her son. Her fiancé threw her out of the house for cheating on him. Nkoli and Obinna devised a plan to trick Ifeoma by bringing Nkoli to live with them. As Ifeoma was outside with Chidera that evening, Obinna came in carrying Nkoli. He told Ifeoma that he met the woman lifeless in the forest and decided to help her. Ifeoma was shocked to see the strange woman in her house. She couldn't say a word. Obinna told Ifeoma that Nkoli would be staying with them for the time being. Ifeoma reluctantly agreed. The next day, as Obinna left for his business, Nkoli told Ifeoma that she had come to collect her money, or Chidera. Ifeoma begged her to give her some time to raise the money, as she had no money on her. Nkoli agreed, but on one condition, that she must make sure she lacked nothing, and she can do whatever she wants if she wants to keep Chidera. Ifeoma, out of desperation and fear of losing Chidera, agreed without knowing Nkoli was her husband's mistress. Nkoli became the madam of the house, as she does nothing in the house but eat and sleep. Obinna couldn't talk as he knew the consequences. Likewise Ifeoma. Both couples were keeping a secret. A peaceful and happy home turned sour immediately. The presence of Nkoli changed their lives in a bad way. Ifeoma went to her friend Ogechi and told her what she has been passing through in her marriage. Her friend encouraged her to focus her energy on Chidera, that Nkoli might not be the mother, or she would get tired and leave them. As Ifeoma was returning from Ogechi's house, she had Obinna and Nkoli mourning inside the room. She went closer to peep. She saw them together. She heard Obinna telling her that he had missed her since they last spent time together. Ifeoma was devastated hearing all Obinna told Nkoli. She thought through all her ordeal with Nkoli. At that point, she realized she had been the fool. She decided that she would play along with them before punishing them for the pain they caused her. Ifeoma collected a huge amount of money from Obinna. She sold most of her things and the only piece of land they had. She told Obinna and Nkoli a few days later that she would love to visit her parents with Chidera. They both agreed because they needed time alone without having Ifeoma around. Days turned into weeks and months. Nkoli and Obinna became worried about Ifeoma and Chidera's whereabouts. Obina went to Ifeoma's house, but she was not there, as her parents told her she never visited them. Ogechi, who was Ifeoma's best friend, visited Obina and Nkoli. She told them that Ifeoma asked her to inform them that she had disappeared with Chidera. She also informed them that Ifeoma found out about Obina's betrayal with Nkoli the other day when she secretly walked in on them and was listening to their conversation. Nkoli was dumbfounded that she had been played by Ifeoma and she would never see her son again. She was heartbroken. Obina was angry at Nkoli for destroying his peaceful home. Obina searched for Ifeoma, but he couldn't find her. Nkoli, realizing she had lost everything, including the only child she had, and Obina was broke, as Ifeoma took all his money and sold his land. Nkoli abandoned Obina for the next available rich man. Obina never set his eyes on his son or Ifeoma again. He lived and died a lonely and a miserable man, as the whole village heard of his betrayal to Ifeoma and no one agreed to get married to him. This story teaches us that we should never take decisions that we know deep down we are not comfortable with. Like Ifeoma took a decision not to have children just to please her husband, it also teaches us that no matter how long it takes, the truth must always reveal the evil deeds of men. And remember that the heart of man is desperately wicked. So let's be guided and careful out there. Until next time, please let me know your thoughts about the story in the comment section. Bye bye.